Imagine once being hailed as the king of British boxing, gliding onto red carpets in a Ferrari, somersaulting into the ring while cameras flashed, and collecting millions with every punch. For a time, that was Prince Naseem Hamed's everyday reality. He was the showman who redefined the featherweight division, a fighter who made even casual fans tune in just to witness the spectacle. But fast forward to 2025, and the story takes a very different turn. The man once celebrated for his flamboyance and devastating power now lives largely out of the public eye. Fans who once shouted his name now ask in puzzled tones, "What happened to Prince Naseem? Why did he vanish from the sport so suddenly? Is his lifestyle still as lavish as it once was? Or is there a more tragic truth behind the silence?" Naseem's rise was as unlikely as it was electrifying. Born in Sheffield on February 12, 1974, to Yemeni immigrant parents, he grew up in a small, crowded household with 9 siblings. Money was scarce, and the neighborhood could be unforgiving. From an early age, he stood out, mimicking Muhammad Ali in the mirror, and announcing he would one day be better than Sugar Ray Leonard. At first, nobody took those boasts seriously, until he began knocking opponents cold. By the time he was 7, he was already a fixture in Brendan Ingle's gym, where he absorbed not just boxing skills, but an entire philosophy of rhythm and movement. Ingle had him dancing, shadowboxing to reggae, drilling defensive maneuvers until they became instinct. And yet, there was something no trainer could instill: the natural, explosive power that made Naseem a prodigy. By his mid-teens, he was sparring, and often dominating, grown professionals. His reflexes were otherworldly, his confidence larger still. When he made his televised professional debut in 1992, he entered the ring with a grin that bordered on arrogance and flattened his opponent in 2 rounds. British audiences had never seen anything like him. Was he a genius or a clown, a savior of British boxing or an insolent street kid? The answer, of course, was both. He dubbed himself the Prince, and the boxing world could not look away. Titles soon followed. In 1995, he captured the WBO featherweight crown from Steve Robinson in hostile Cardiff territory, silencing a Welsh crowd that had booed his every step to the ring. He danced circles around Robinson before stopping him in the 8th round, announcing to the world that a new era had begun. But winning wasn't enough for Naseem. He had to entertain. His entrances became legendary. Elaborate walks to the ring with fireworks overhead, backflips over the ropes, taunts delivered with a theatrical flourish. He was Ali with a wilder streak, Tyson with added swagger. America soon took notice. In December 1997, he headlined at Madison Square Garden against Kevin Kelly, in a bout that remains one of the decade's most thrilling spectacles. Knockdowns came in bunches until Hamed finished the job in the 4th round. HBO rolled out the red carpet, and overnight, Prince Naseem became an international star. Endorsements poured in, talk shows clamored for appearances, and the young fighter embraced every bit of the attention. Yet behind the glitz, cracks began to form. The wealth and constant adulation fueled a lifestyle more about performance than preparation. He split from Brendan Ingle, the mentor who had shaped him, in a dispute that left lasting scars. Training camps grew less disciplined, sparring sessions shortened, his once razor-sharp reflexes dulled as his weight fluctuated. He surrounded himself with yes men and lived as though his natural talent would always be enough. "I can knock these guys out at 50%, he boasted, a line that revealed both his supreme confidence and a creeping complacency. Still, victories kept coming. He unified titles by beating the likes of Tom "Boom Boom" Johnson and Wilfredo Vasquez. By 1999, He added the WBC belt to his collection, cementing his status as one of the sport's most formidable punchers. But seasoned observers sensed a change. His timing no longer felt as precise. The hunger that once drove him through grueling sessions seemed to fade. Outside the ring, he reveled in excess. Luxury cars, diamond-studded watches, nights of celebrity partying. Inside, he began to look less like the unstoppable prodigy and more like a man relying on memory and ego. Everything built toward one defining night. April 7th, 2001, at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas. The opponent was Marco Antonio Barrera, a Mexican technician known for relentless precision and icy focus. Hamed entered the arena with his usual bravado, dancing and grinning, convinced his power would overwhelm the disciplined challenger. But, from the opening bell, it was clear this fight would be different. Barrera refused to be drawn into wild exchanges. He countered with crisp combinations, pivoted away from Hamed's lunges, and slowly dismantled the prince's aura of invincibility. By the middle rounds, Hamed looked bewildered, his trademark swagger replaced by frustration. In the 12th, Barrera punctuated his dominance by pinning Hamed against the turnbuckle and driving his face into the padding. A symbolic moment as much as a tactical one. The unanimous decision left no doubt. The king had been dethroned. Hamed left the ring that night without a belt and without a plan. He skipped the post-fight press conference and offered no public vow to return. Fans and promoters waited for a rematch announcement that never came. Months turned into a year. When he finally fought again, it was a low-profile bout against Manuel Calvo in 2002. Hamed won on points but looked sluggish and uninspired. The crowd booed, sensing that the magic had evaporated. He was just 28 years old, yet that would be his final professional fight. What followed was not the dramatic fall from grace typical of many fighters, but a slow fade into near-complete silence. By the early 2000s, Hamed's fortune was estimated at more than $38 million, roughly $75 million at the time, enough to ensure that he would never need to fight again. Without the discipline of training camps or the thrill of competition, however, the trappings of wealth became a gilded cage. Public appearances grew rare. His once sculpted frame expanded noticeably, prompting tabloid speculation about dramatic weight gain. Photographs surfaced of a man almost unrecognizable from the lean, cat-quick fighter of his prime. Unlike many retired champions who stay connected to the sport through commentary or mentorship, Hamed turned inward. He gave few interviews and declined numerous offers to work with young fighters. Promoters tried repeatedly to lure him back for exhibitions or media ventures, but he quietly refused. Fans who once celebrated his every move were left to wonder why a fighter so charismatic in the spotlight would retreat so completely from public life. Then, in 2005, came a moment that forced him back into headlines for all the wrong reasons. Driving a $325,000 Mercedes McLaren SLR at high speed through South Yorkshire, Hamed attempted a reckless pass on a blind curve and collided head-on with another car. The other driver suffered severe injuries and long-term trauma. Investigators revealed that Hamed had been speeding far above the limit and lacked valid insurance. He was sentenced to 15 months in prison and served 16 weeks before early release. For a man who once proclaimed himself untouchable, the mugshot was a startling contrast. Prince Naseem Hamed's brief prison sentence in 2006 might have been only 16 weeks, but the damage to his image lasted far longer. The reckless driving crash that injured another man stripped away any illusion that he was still the untouchable showman who once somersaulted into arenas. For the first time, the public saw not the dazzling fighter or the playful provocateur, but a man who seemed lost, careless, and painfully human. Headlines that once celebrated his knockouts now dwelled on his court appearances. When he emerged from custody, the confident sparkle that defined his interviews was gone. Friends say the experience humbled him. He retreated to a luxurious but private life in Berkshire and later Surrey, surrounding himself with wealth, but very few people. The sprawling houses and fleet of exotic cars, Lamborghinis, Bentleys, Rolls-Royces, were all still there, but the man who once reveled in attention now avoided it. Paparazzi occasionally snapped photos of him driving through Windsor or shopping in London. And those pictures always reignited the same conversation. How had one of boxing's brightest stars faded so completely from the sport he once ruled? The physical transformation was striking. The featherweight phenom, who once kept a razor-lean frame, began to gain significant weight, a change that became a favorite topic of tabloids. Photographs in the late 2000s showed a man nearly double the size of his fighting prime. Former fans debated online whether he had gained more than 100 pounds. Some treated it as gossip, others with concern. For those who had idolized his lightning speed and cat-like agility, it was a painful reminder that time spares no one, especially when the discipline of daily training is gone. Yet wealth alone does not explain his silence. Other fighters with equally sudden retirements often transition into coaching, commentary, or promotional roles. Hamed did none of it. He declined television offers, turned down proposals to mentor young boxers, and ignored opportunities to capitalize on the nostalgia surrounding his heyday. Even when his sons began training at the same Winco Bank gym where he had once learned under Brendan Ingle, he kept his distance from the spotlight. There were no grand speeches about legacy, no published memoir to settle old debates, no documentary from his own perspective. Meanwhile, the sport of boxing moved on. A new generation of British champions, Ricky Hatton, Carl Froch, later Anthony Joshua, and Tyson Fury, rose to prominence. Their accomplishments filled the headlines that once belonged to Hamed, and younger fans who never saw him fight began to forget. YouTube kept his spectacular knockouts alive, but without fresh interviews or public appearances, the man behind those highlights became a mystery. At fan conventions and boxing expos, conversations about him often ended with a sigh. He could have been one of the greatest. When the International Boxing Hall of Fame finally inducted him in 2015, many expected a triumphant return to the public stage. Instead, Hamed delivered a short, subdued acceptance speech that surprised those who remembered the charismatic performer. He thanked supporters, acknowledged his career, and left the podium with little fanfare. Reporters noted the contrast, the once irrepressible showman now quiet and reserved, as if he wanted the evening to end quickly. Sightings in the years that followed only deepened the sense of a man withdrawing from the world. In 2022, a rare public appearance shocked fans. Hamed, then approaching 50, walked gingerly through a venue and looked far older than his age. Social media erupted with disbelief. "Is that really Prince Naz?" one commenter wrote. "I didn't even recognize him." Others expressed genuine concern for his health, noting his careful steps and the absence of the vibrant energy that once lit up arenas. Friends who occasionally speak about him mention chronic knee pain and lingering fatigue. The long-term cost of a lifetime in the ring combined with years of inactivity. They also describe a man fiercely protective of his privacy. He rarely attends social events, avoids interviews, and seems content to live outside the spotlight, spending time with family and quietly supporting his son's interests. When approached by journalists, he politely declines, saying only that his boxing chapter is finished. For fans, the silence is the hardest part. Boxing history is filled with redemption stories, fighters who fall from grace, only to return older, wiser, and renewed. George Foreman shocked the world by regaining the heavyweight title at 45. Mike Tyson reinvented himself as a media personality and exhibition fighter. Even those who never fight again often remain visible as trainers, commentators, or mentors. Hamed, by contrast, seems to have chosen near-complete disappearance. The tragedy is not that he lost to Barrera or that he gained weight. It is that he left no farewell, no explanation, no final act to frame his legacy. The man who once demanded the world's attention has spent more than 2 decades avoiding it, leaving fans to fill the silence with speculation. Did the Barrera defeat permanently break his competitive spirit? Did wealth make the grind of training seem pointless? Did prison time convince him to retreat from public life for good? None of these theories can be confirmed, because the only person who truly knows remains determined not to speak. And yet, the fascination endures. His highlight reels still draw millions of views. Young fighters still study the unique angles of his punches and the unorthodox footwork that baffled opponents. Older fans tell stories of the nights when British arenas shook with chants of "Nas, Nas, Nas." His influence lingers, even if he refuses to claim it. As he moves through his early 50s, glimpses of his private life suggest he remains surrounded by comfort. The luxury cars and expansive homes remain. He provides for his family and occasionally offers quiet support to young Yemeni fighters who seek his advice. But these interactions happen out of view, almost in secret. Publicly, the Prince of British boxing has become a recluse, a living reminder that fame, no matter how intense, can fade to a whisper when its owner chooses to walk away. 2 decades after his last fight, Prince Naseem Hamed's story remains one of the most enigmatic in modern boxing. He once ruled arenas with unmatched swagger, somersaulting over the ropes to fireworks and deafening cheers. Today, he lives in near-complete silence. His absence is not simply a retirement, it is an erasure, a deliberate step away from the sport and the celebrity that defined his youth. In a world where athletes routinely chase one more payday or return to the ring to satisfy their ego, Hamed's decision to vanish seems almost radical. The few public glimpses of him over the past decade have only intensified curiosity. When fans spot him, perhaps behind the wheel of a Rolls-Royce in Windsor or supporting his sons at a low-key amateur bout, they see a man changed. The once sleek featherweight now carries the visible weight of time. His walk is slower, his frame heavier, his once sharp features softened. To those who remember the lightning reflexes and explosive entrances, it is a jarring contrast. Social media comments often mix nostalgia with worry. Is that really the same man who knocked out Kevin Kelly? Close friends and former associates speak carefully about his health. They mention knee pain and lingering fatigue, the physical toll of years in the ring compounded by a long period without serious training. They also emphasize his desire for privacy. He rarely attends events, seldom grants interviews, and when he does appear, it is usually for family reasons, not publicity. He remains financially comfortable, reportedly still worth tens of millions of pounds, but wealth was never going to shield him from the realities of aging or the restlessness that follows a life lived at such extremes. What makes Hamed's retreat so striking is how complete it has been. Other fighters who retired young often found new ways to stay connected. Lennox Lewis built a career as a commentator and ambassador for the sport. George Foreman became a businessman and mentor, even reclaiming a world title at 45. Mike Tyson reinvented himself through exhibitions and media ventures. Hamed, by contrast, seems almost determined to remain a private citizen. as if the spotlight itself is something he no longer trusts. Some longtime fans believe that the loss to Marco Antonio Barrera in 2001 did more than blemish his record. It punctured the very identity he had built. Up until that night in Las Vegas, Hamed was the undefeated showman who insisted he was destined to retire without a single defeat. The fight with Barrera revealed that even the prince could be outboxed and outthought. It was not merely a defeat, it was a public unmasking. For a man who had built his career on invincibility, that realization may have been too heavy to bear. Others point to the loss of his mentor Brendan Ingle as an even deeper cut. Their split during Hamed's prime removed the steady influence that had once balanced his extravagant style with rigorous discipline. Without Ingle's guiding voice, Hamed's training grew inconsistent, and after boxing, he lacked the grounding presence many retired athletes rely on. When Ingle passed away in 2018, Hamed offered a brief, respectful statement but avoided the public memorials that drew much of British boxing royalty. The absence spoke volumes. There is, of course, another side to the story, one less about tragedy and more about choice. Perhaps Hamed recognized earlier than most that boxing rarely offers a graceful exit. Many fighters stay too long, absorbing punishment that leaves lasting damage. Hamed left with his health largely intact and his fortune secure. He avoided the financial ruin and chronic injuries that plague so many former champions. To walk away while still young and wealthy, even if it meant enduring decades of curiosity and rumor, may have been the most self-preserving decision he ever made. Whether he ever chooses to share his story is a decision only he can make. At 51, he remains young enough to embark on a second career, as a trainer, mentor, or simply a voice of experience for a new generation. Boxing would welcome him. So would fans who still chant his name when they watch old highlight reels. Even a single long interview could reclaim his narrative and remind the world why he once captivated millions. Until that happens, his life stands as both inspiration and cautionary tale. It is the story of a boy from Sheffield who defied every expectation to become a global superstar, who dazzled audiences with audacious skill, and who, at the peak of fame and fortune, chose to disappear. It warns of how fleeting adoration can be, but it also affirms the power of personal choice, the right to step away, to live privately, to define one's own ending. If his story resonates with you, let it serve as a call to action. Celebrate greatness while it's here, and remember that behind every highlight reel is a human being who owes the world no explanations. Watch his fights, share his legacy, and draw inspiration from both the triumph and the silence.